You're on.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our 10th episode of Shift Office Hours. I am Sarah Mayer, and with me is Cynthia Closkey. Say
well,
hello.
Hi there. Hello.
We are both partners at Shift Collaborative, a agency located in the city of Pittsburgh. Although I am currently not in the city of Pittsburgh, I am in South Carolina on a sort of vacation.
How is your sort of vacation going?
Sort of okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Just okay? It must be going great.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird vacation because of COVID and feeling like it's really just a different location to quarantine in. But still, of course, it's nice to get away. I guess I'm not looking forward to the 13 to 14 hour drive back tomorrow.
Sure. I see, though, that your vacation place has the requisite seashell art behind it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of beach theme art going on to partake in this apartment for sure.
Excellent. Very on brand for that area.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So today we have a couple of different topics that we are going to cover, but just as a reminder for anybody that's tuning in for the first time, or even if you've tuned in before, you can chat us your specific marketing questions, anything related to, running marketing, branding, website, SEO, whatever questions you have. You can just chat those to us using the YouTube chat feature here in this live stream. You can also email your questions to us at officehours@shiftcollaborative.com. So,
and we do this every Friday. It's kind of fun to have a chance to sort of sit back and reflect on what's going on in the marketing, advertising, and communication worlds. But in addition, we're eager to offer some ideas and help to folks that maybe are looking for solutions. Their situation is changed. Their marketing world is topsy-turvy. Topsy-turvy is a fun place for us to play, and we'd like to be helpful.
That's right.
So you, Sarah, are out of your rut right now because you are on this vacation. But that made us start thinking about getting out of a marketing rut, which is a thing that we see organizations, businesses run into trouble.
That's right. So what do we mean by marketing rut per se?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean that maybe they've had at some point sort of thought through, these are the ways that we're going to reach our leads, that we're going to try to bring in new leads and hope to convert them. And they came up with a set of tactics, and then they just execute those month after month, year after year, without really changing them up very much. In some cases, even using the same messaging and artwork over and over again. It's just maybe the same ad in the same places over and over. I think, for example, of some sort of like a lot of times like a cultural arts magazine, like a theater or symphony magazine, where you maybe have a sponsorship full page ad, and at best you like change up the language and the art, or say have a great 65th season or something.
Right. Yeah, you're just changing that one thing.
Right. So what are some signs? So we say that we see people in these kind of situations, and we can help people see that. But if someone's trying to sort of self-diagnose themselves and kind of figure out if they are in that less of a groove and more of a rut, what would be the signals that they could think about?
So, well, I think that, one of them is, are you looking at the performance of the things that you're doing? So let's say you're doing an ad in the symphony program, as you mentioned. Have you tracked any responses from that ad? And are you getting responses from that ad? What kinds of responses are you getting from that ad? Are they qualified? So really thinking about looking at all of your existing tactics and making sure that you're measuring them for ROI, and if they're not working, having those discussions and conversations to say, why isn't this working? Is it the artwork that's not maybe sort of landing with our target audience? Is it the messaging isn't right? It's not compelling it enough, it's not clear. If you're not having those discussions around your current tactics, then that probably means you're not evaluating them at all, and so you don't know if they're actually working or not. So that to me is being in a rut, because you're not evolving the existing tactics. You're just doing them without any changes.
Sure. There's also, you really thinking through what impact do you expect something to have? So the impact of an ad in, say, a symphony program is going to have a whole different set of impacts to, say, I don't know, like bus posters or something on the outside of a bus stop. And so not taking part and parcel of measuring your return on your investment is knowing what return you're expecting.
Right.
And then also knowing all of the touch points you're anticipating and how many it's going to require for someone to be reminded. There's maybe very, very good reasons why your ad is running where it is. But if you haven't clarified whether it's successful or not, that, to your point, does it come in play at any point? Do you have a way to measure?
Yeah, and I think so. That's a really good point to bring up. It's like, so what is the objective of this particular tactic? Is it for brand awareness? Is it just about getting our name out there and getting our brand out there? We're not expecting any action from it. We just know we want to get awareness in this particular channel for our brand. Or are you trying to generate some sort of action, whether it be a phone call or a lead somebody completing a form or signing up for a newsletter or becoming a fan of your social media page? If there's an action, then that's what you're measuring. So brand awareness often is a little bit harder to measure in terms of quantifiable dollars. But by knowing the objective of, say, that symphony ad is, look, we support the symphony and we just are good partners. It gets our brand out there. We're not looking for leads from it. So defining those objectives is really, really important, because otherwise you won't know how to measure.
Right, exactly. So that's one way. So realizing that you haven't really been looking at performance, or you looked at it, but you didn't actually take action based on what you were seeing. You didn't try something new. So that leads to, like, what new things have you tried? Have you tried a new tactic? Have you done an experiment? Have you run a test of something different to see if it creates a different result?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a book that we have in our library, and I probably could find it here in my remote home office library too, called Your Marketing Sucks, See Details Inside. And so one of the things that book promotes is running these experiments, really trying things out. And if nothing else, maybe even stopping advertising for a second and seeing whether there's any change. If you've been spending X number of dollars for a period of time, and then getting a certain number of results, and then you stopped, if you didn't see any drop in sales, then it doesn't necessarily say that you should never advertise, but it does say that those tactics maybe weren't having the impact that you hoped that they would.
Yeah, and I think that right now, I've anecdotally heard some brands talk about, they've stopped certain tactics purely from a financial standpoint, and right now during the pandemic, and they haven't seen a drop in sales. And so the pandemic made them, so it was like sort of a positive coming out of it, is that the pandemic made them stop doing some of their advertising, and they were able to then identify that these things, they weren't really yielding a return. So that was just money literally being pushed right out the front door without any action, and now they know that they don't have to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think that stopping advertising is always an option, and if you're evaluating that on a regular basis, then you can redistribute that money elsewhere to be in a more effective way.
I think we're not advertising, not marketing at all. Not only because we are marketing people, but because well, we define marketing kind of broadly, but so in many ways, almost anything has a flavor of it that is a way of conveying your brand and getting the word out. But there are a million different kinds of tactics, advertising being one. We keep saying advertising, but I think we're talking about a much, broader range, including, asking for reviews, or encouraging people to tell a friend, or PR, or even great customer support can have an impact on your outreach and has elements of marketing in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking too, content marketing. So, if you're going to have some extra dollars that you're not spending in advertising, you could put that towards generating new content for your website that could then be, found more easily in search and get people to your site that way. And that might be a new thing for you to do and invest in. And so it's not advertising, but it does have an implication in sales.
Sure. So trying new tactics, experimenting with adding more money in, taking more money out, trying at different things and seeing what impacts you have. And it's best if you could do that with like a true experimental style, where you're saying, before you just say, well, let's just change this. Say, if I make this change, I anticipate X will happen. And then seeing if you were right. Then you both learn something and you see some new results that then you can say, what's your next hypothesis? What's your next test?
Yep.
So those are all things that you're in a marketing rut. Another way that you can know that your marketing is stuck in some way is if your business or your industry has changed and yet you're still using the same outreach strategies that you were before. That's part of why we're talking about it now, that most industries, I don't think there's any industries that have not been changed by the year 2020.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what industry hasn't.
I can't think of a single one. And so if you're not doing something different this year, then by definition, you're a little bit stuck. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that one way to know is looking at your competitors. You should be looking at your competitors maybe, a couple times a year. Where are they? What are they doing? Are they utilizing things, different channels? Are they doing interesting things in the existing channels that you guys are sharing, that you're both in? But you should definitely be looking at your competitors and understanding that competitive analysis. So that'll help inform kind of maybe some new ideas that you could have, or inspiration.
And I don't think you mean that in sort of like a keeping up with the Joneses kind of a way, where it's more.
It's more to be informed and you don't want to do the exact same thing that they're doing, but you want to know what they're doing, because if it seems like an effective tactic, you could do it too, but do it within your own brand, authentic brand and, your own voice. You should do it too. But, it's not a keeping up with the Joneses, but I definitely have had a lot of clients say to me, well, we're only advertising in this publication because our competitors are there. And if we don't advertise, then people won't think we exist.
Mm-hmm.
That is a thing
that
I hear pretty often.
I feel like those are kinds of things you can test, though. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not clear to me that's a given, that if you change your tactics, people are going to think something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or just by not being there. Yeah, but by being absent, then you don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
The tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound. Kind of a quandary. Sure. I have certainly counseled clients that have that problem to test it out and to pull their ad for a couple of months and see what happens. And I think it sort of fits into a brand awareness category in terms of that being an objective. Like, you're not looking to necessarily get specific action from being in that same publication as your competitor. It's really just a brand preservation tactic, if you will.
Depending on the publication, there may also be some implications about like also trying to do some get some mentions in there. If it's a trade pub, they may have different rules and ethics about that, and it may be that you kind of have to pay to play. One hopes not, but sometimes that's the reality of it.
Yeah. Yep. This is true.
And then I think another just very clear way to know that you may be in a rut with your marketing is whether you're bored by it. I mean, if you're not into it, why should anyone else be?
Yeah, if you're really struggling, to write your social media posts, or if you send a monthly email newsletter and you just can't even imagine what to put in it month after month, you might be in a marketing rut.
You almost surely are. At least in some way, you're in a rut as far as the creativity of it. If it's not inspiring to you, it maybe is not interesting to anyone else. It's not bringing the information that it used to. So, I mean, looking at results of it can help you get interested in it. Like, wow, I thought that email was just pretty straightforward, but look at all the impact we had. Or we ran a webinar and it was something that I thought everybody knew, and yet we had 300 signups. So things like that, looking at your data maybe can help you find some inspiration. But even if that, if it doesn't, then it's time for a little bit of a freshener up, right, Minnie? Everybody, this is Minnie. Maybe there she is.
Hi, Minnie.
Minnie is on her way up her cat.
Oh, no. Yeah, I would say the other thing too, like if the data you have isn't necessarily inspiring you to get out of your rut, then perhaps you want a survey. So, we've counseled clients who, let's say, just use the email newsletter as an example. They run an email newsletter, they're not sure if the content that they're putting out on a regular basis is the kind of content that people are engaging with, because they're maybe not seeing a lot of click-throughs, for example. And so, in that scenario, if you survey your newsletter subscriber base and ask them, what sorts of things would be interesting for us to be sharing with you, we could, talk about these types of things. Which of these things interests you? And then that at least gets you some real intelligence from your audience about what they want from you. And then you're not having to, on a monthly basis or quarterly or however often, weekly, some people send emails, you're not having to try to come up with things. You can really respond to an actual need in the market.
Absolutely. I mean, you can kind of get, depending on how you've built your newsletter, sometimes you can see based on the content you've been generating and sharing whether it's interesting to people. If you've built it so that there's like a little teaser and they click through, you can kind of go from that. But for content that's new to you, or that you've seen examples of, and maybe you're thinking there's an investment to doing it, just asking about it a little bit first can give you a little bit more confidence that you're headed in the right direction. You still may need to just do some tests with it, but having some input and feedback can just give you a little bit of a sense that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. What else?
So I think we're thinking about like what, if you're trying to get inspired, what are ways, so you're in this rut, trying to do a new thing, you're getting inspired. What are some ways to shake up your life? And I think one is you can look at what other people are doing, and you're counseling. As you said, we counsel people to look at people in your industry, look at people in other industries, see if there's some cool idea. This is Max, by the way. This is the other cat. I'm not sure that today is their sudden office hours debut.
It's a great addition.
They too want to get out of their rut. Napping all day. So looking at what companies are doing in other related industries where it's a similar kind of a target market, but it's not necessarily a direct parallel to what you do. That can be some kinds of inspiration, can just give you a fresh idea.
Mm-hmm. I was just, so I think that's always good I do that, if I'm looking to sort of generate a good subject line for an email, I'll just look at like the last 15 emails that I've gotten, their subject lines, and think about which one of those seems interesting. Did I open that email? Why did I open that email? And this is something we do all the time. So, I think that looking at what others are doing is a really informative, helpful approach for some, as opposed to just staring at a blank paper and trying to get started, I think that's hard.
Blank papers are very, very hard.
Yeah,
Always
yeah,
are.
they are. It's intimidating, or blank screen these days, depending on your medium.
Yeah. Sometimes changing your medium can help you sort of shake it up too. Working
That's
with
right.
your non-dominant hand, taking a walk, all kinds of things that can help you have new ideas. One
Yeah.
idea that I have seen people suggest and that I have found helpful sometimes is to think, what's the worst thing that we could do? What's the dumbest thing we could try? And it's not the idea is not therefore, oh, let's try that. But it might be that there's elements of it, like why is that idea dumb? Or what part of that is a good idea? Like what's the best outcome that could come from this really weird attempt? That may create new ideas and new inspiration and new kind of avenues to explore. And at the very least, it might make you laugh because it was so crazy and stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's just a sort of a helpful brainstorming sort of road to go down, kind of, preemptively, what are really stupid ideas? Let's get those out in the air. and then sometimes maybe they aren't as stupid as you think, and they end up being the thing that you try.
Right. You can imagine like the results of what could be the most successful campaign, and then back your way out of that super successful campaign to like, well, if we wanted to, get mentioned on Ellen, like what would it take to get mentioned there? Like, not just sort of calling them up because that doesn't work, but like, what's the kind of thing that it would be? And you can't quite do things like, well, let's make a viral video, or let's make the most popular ever TikTok. Like that's a fun thing to try, but really the steps then that you're saying to yourself are, we need to start to get versed in this new thing. And so maybe it does head you down a channel that is interesting to pursue, that you maybe still want to complement with some other tactics that go with.
And I think another thing to get inspired is to experiment different things. I think we talked about this, is just, if you're trying a brand new thing, you don't know necessarily if it's going to work or not. So that's the whole idea. So you want to set some very clear parameters for the experiment of, this is the length of time we're going to try this. We give it enough time to know if it's working or not. Don't, sort of short sell yourself on the time range. This is the budget we're going to apply to it. Really think about the visuals, the messaging, what you're kind of utilizing in this channel, and be very clear with what the intended or hoped outcome of the experiment is, so that you can know if it worked or not.
Right. And that's good where, you've got a number of team members and someone saying, I really wish we would just try this one thing. And you keep saying, it seems like not great. Well, if you construct it as an experiment, then you can all feel confident that we're going to learn something. And hopefully, and why not? And if you're not in a great spot in the first place, what do you have to lose? You may as well try something new.
Yep. All right. So we found ourselves actually in a marketing rut, did we not?
We did
at the end of 2019, maybe.
Yeah, we were kind of feeling like we were doing some of these things that we just spoke about. We were feeling uninspired about things that we were doing on social media, in our monthly newsletter. It was hard to get them done, which was really a signal that they weren't interesting. They weren't fun for us, and therefore they weren't really, number one, showing us off in our best light, because we were kind of struggling with them. And second, if the kinds of people that we're trying to talk to often are, other marketers, maybe within inside a company, or people who need to respond to marketing, if we weren't interested, they probably wouldn't be either. So we felt like that was not great.
Yeah. And I think, we have obviously the skills and ability to know what new things to try, or to know what new things are out there to try. We just weren't necessarily doing them ourselves and giving them a try. And so one of those things, I think we did the first thing, which was to look at our existing channels. What are we currently doing? We have email marketing. We have a monthly newsletter. We have social media that we're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and now we're on YouTube. And we have our website and our portfolio, and we have networking. So we'll look across all of our existing channels and how do we know what's working and not? And we created our own performance report, which is something we do with clients, but we hadn't done it for ourselves, so that we could see what was working and what kinds of engagement we were getting across those existing channels. So we took, kind of that internal look at what we're already doing. And then we thought, what can we do differently, new, exciting? And that's kind of how Shift Office Hours was born.
It was one of a number of tactics that we sort of brainstormed and then, built on those brainstorms and each independently thought of things. And I think you and Barry, your husband Barry, had some inspiration that helped kind of create this version of this. We had a number of different ideas that coalesced into this office hours concept.
Yeah, and what's exciting about that is that we generated a lot of really great ideas that we couldn't execute all of them at the same time. So we just sort of picked, I think, 2 or 3 things just to get started with and to test out and try. But we have this whole list of great ideas that, they're not lost, and we can go back to them and explore those. So that just going through the exercise of the brainstorming and coming up with the ideas, even though we didn't use all of them, is still really useful and helpful. And I think we're going to, be able to evolve our marketing better because of that exercise alone. So we would certainly encourage doing that.
I think another thing we did, at least in my view, was to move a little bit away from sort of quantity of posting on different social channels toward quality, not so much of the post, but more quality of the engagement, like trying to be more social on these social networks where we're responding to people a bit more. And we are looking for how do we not just use these things as like a bullhorn, but more as a way of being engaged and being a good internet citizen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think so that was one of the things that we did was we identified on our team, like, if you will, social media champions, people that really like a particular social media channel. So they know it really well, and their comfort zone is that particular channel. And that means that they are kind of a little bit more aware of, just sort of best practices in that channel and things that work in that particular channel. So what we were doing before is that we had every person on the team would take 1 week and they would generate content for all of the social media channels. And so what we were finding is that, some people had no problem with certain channels because it was their channel. And then when it came to all the other channels, they were really struggling. So,
and so for me, for example, like Twitter is, I'm on Twitter way more than maybe I probably should, but it is a place where I feel at home. I have connections that have been built up since I think I joined in early 2007, so it's been some number of years. So I was feeling comfortable with posting on Twitter, knowing that I was doing the right things and having some good ways of doing that, and also engaging. But then Instagram, I know how to put a picture up and put a caption on it, maybe some hashtags, but like stories, tell me more. Like, what should I be thinking about there? How can I do this best? And it just wasn't flowing. Just wasn't, not my jive.
Yeah, it's harder. I think
that's what we learned.
Vibing, yeah, that's on point. Yeah, so I think when you're one of the things that it's one thing for you to not individually on a personal level be, like into a particular channel or feel like you're not, sort of knowing what to do there. But if you're the representative of a brand or an organization, I think that adds another layer of intimidation onto it. So this new system kind of broke down those barriers, and we have multiple people that are good at multiple channels. So we have like a buddy system, like we have teams, and they can collaborate with each other, because that's what we're all about here at Shift, collaborating with each other, because it does create the best stuff. So that is how we're running. How long have we been doing it like this? I think maybe since the beginning of the pandemic, maybe.
It's been at least that long, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it's in March. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what we're finding is that people, we're individually enjoying posting for Shift on social media and developing the content for it. It's a little bit easier, and marketing shouldn't be hard. It should be easy, and so that's been a positive outcome of it. And I think that what we're putting in the channels is better too. It's just more consistent with what should be happening in that particular channel, and like you said, really built for engagement as opposed to just blasting out information.
Yeah. That idea of like champions of different channels reminds me of something. So you might have the sense, well, we're all marketers, so we should all be good at all the things. And it's really hard to be good at all the things, particularly when they're coming at us at the speed at which it is. It reminds me of like super massive flashback to the year 1991, ages and ages ago. So I was at the database company Oracle then, and I had joined when they were about to release version 7, and I was there to here it is right here, to make the to work on the user manuals. This is the inside title page of the manual that I worked on, the Oracle 7 Server Administrator's Guide. If you ever question my nerd cred, know that my name is on that. So managing these great big database servers is what we were helping people know how to do. Oracle 6, the version before this, what people were telling me, that was the first version where there was no one person in the organization that could really know how the whole thing worked. But it was also the version that really plateaued them up, like it really brought out a new level of abilities in the marketplace. So it's, you might think it's not great to not be able to get your mind around all the things, but by definition, your success is going to mean that you can't. Like your reach, if you're trying to do something that's really big and audacious, you have got to have other people on your team. So that's what it makes me think about. We have different people with different skills, and it's by working together that we get the biggest success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can learn from each other because, like you said, there's interest at level of things, and then there's just interest in learning. And so people that are interested in certain topics, they're going to be naturally more prone to know about them, and then they can teach other people that, because I think all of our team members are interested in knowing things. It's just the time, we can't possibly know everything. So working together is just makes it all work.
Teamwork makes the dream work, as we're told.
Yep. All right. So marketing ruts. If you have any questions, if you think you're in a marketing rut and you're not sure by even these things we've told you, we're happy to talk you out of it.
Right.
See if we can get you out of it.
Yeah, lots of different kinds of ways to inspire someone to get new ideas. And that kind of thing is always enjoyable. So to help, for us, I think Shift is skilled in inspiring and helping people refine their energy, refine their creativity, and find new ways to work together. So we're always happy to help people with that. Drop us a line at officehours.com, or catch us on Twitter or Facebook or all these other places where we will engage with you, because that's what we do.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. So we wanted to next kind of maybe cover some branding things.
Yeah. So speaking of people that are, trying to break out of, if not a rut, at least break out of something into a new space and maybe make some changes. We were pretty interested in the new logo that Nissan, really whole brand that Nissan put out. Let me see. Let's see if I can throw some stuff up on screen here. What was your initial? I'm going to get this on here, but in the meantime, Sarah, what was your reaction to this? What did you think of Nissan maybe before?
Yeah, so I mean, the brand was very 3D, like bubbly, and it's on a physical product, a car, so that kind of makes sense. But that type of design doesn't work necessarily in all of the different places that a brand needs to show up and be applied. So I could see how maybe it was causing some issues. Um,
So the old logo is this one on the left, and the
Yeah.
new one is this one on the right. And so I think we can immediately see a number of things different. Well, first of all, this is using what we call, well, first of all, it looks a little bit metal, looks three-dimensional, and it's what we might call sort of leaning toward skeuomorphic, but skeuomorphic is often like, pieces of like something that where a piece of an illustration shows a piece of paper with a little tear on the side, or a round pencil or something. So this is more like a 3D modeling, very clean, sort of engineering-ish kind of a vibe to it, I would say. Automotive and machined and so on.
Yeah, I think some of those techniques feel, looking at it next to the new one, it seems a little dated.
And then this new one, so you can see the font is a little bit different, and certainly the font weight has been changed a little. This has been stretched out, exaggerated a little. We have the same general concept of the, a bar in the middle of a circle. And yet this is really quite, as they're saying here, their keywords thin, light, and flexible. I mean, it does feel lighter, doesn't it?
It feels much lighter, and definitely the flexibility is there. You've got open ends as opposed to contiguous, the circle not being broken in the other one. And then there's some, the Nissan layers on top of that circle. It's just clunkier. And in the new version, you definitely can feel the thin and lightness come through, but the flexibility is a little bit more obvious there.
And so I'm sure they had a number of motivations for this. This is not a quick process. It says that they started back in 2017 with this. So it's not like they were rushing. Although I'm certain that they were getting a lot of different input and looking a lot of different directions. But part of what's true about this new look, as opposed to the old one, is that it is both recognizable, but it's also more digital friendly. So this is going to render better, smaller resolutions on smaller screens than the shadows and the three-dimensionality of the old logo could do. I don't know whether
I'd be interested to see it on the actual physical vehicle.
Sure.
How that looks.
Do we want to try? Have we watched A New Day for Nissan?
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Watch it.
Well, let me do this. Can you still see the screen?
I can. I just can't hear it.
Can't hear anything.
You have to change the video.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some setting that we're not doing, but I'm interested, without having to listen to the sound, at the iconography that they're throwing at us here. The New Day, there's it's very organic.
Doesn't feel like a car yet. there's nothing car-like about it yet. But it is very cool. It's very texture heavy as well.
Yeah, look at all these different materials. I'm really fascinated by their material choice and the coloring and all this 3D animation that they're doing. I don't know. Do we feel inspired to go buy a Nissan at this point?
No, I like my car right now, but I like that. I like that all the ending applications here where they're showing the colors and stuff.
That's pretty cool. So again, this is an example of a very flat sort of a design, and we had been seeing some things about, as a general direction, the world is moving toward these more minimal logos and flat design. I was hoping they would have a little example for us here. But so like not the rounded edges, less of the three-dimensionality per se, but also not pure flat colors using gradations and other things where they bleed into each other a little bit more. Very clean lines that work very well at small resolutions, like for phones and even watches and other kinds of devices. The screen in your car itself, maybe.
I mean, I just kind of describe this approach as, a simple, uncluttered view, because, of all the different devices and applications, the simpler you can go with things, the better, because then it's more flexible. and we'll work on all these different mediums. But it just seems just much more and just a visually uncluttered.
And that's exactly what it's meant to be. So yay, Nissan, we're proud of you. Good job.
Yay.
You know, it's so tough doing a big rebrand, like we talked about last week, that there's a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders. So a large organization like that, taking the time to do it is not at all surprising. And so often people get pushback, but I think we're all pretty impressed by that design.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. They mentioned in that article BMW's new brand as well. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that one.
I had. I don't have a link handy, but if you give me a second, I will find it up.
Yeah.
BMW also has now is going to be integrating, letting you get into your BMW car with your watch, your Apple Watch. I mean, here's the Verge saying the flat logo is everything that's wrong with the world. So,
yeah. I think that they've gotten some flack over the redesign, is my understanding. I haven't researched it. I'm just I think
the BMW, so the BMW logo is an interesting one. It originally, maybe you know this already, Sarah, but originally the idea of it was that the company originally made propeller airplanes. And this logo is meant to reflect in a very abstract way a propeller spinning and a blue sky. But it does, I mean, it's very, it's clearly, one of the better known brands in the world, prestigious brand. In this rebranding where they've gone, and this is, back from March, where they've gone from, just like Nissan, from this slightly rounded thing with some dimensionality, some shadowing going on. And then this is pretty much what the logo looks like physically on the cars in the front and the back, and the wheels as well. The new brand is much flatter. It's not using any of the shadowing or anything. To me, it looks very clean. The font that they've got has changed ever so slightly, where this M, for example, now has a little bit of an angle. The B has stretched itself out a little bit in a way that feels, again, maybe just the tiniest bit fresher to me. So I like it, but there's so much history to this brand that I can understand people being really resistant to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that at the same time, they have also they have started to do some different types of subscription models with their cars, so that you have to pay for, you get the base model of the car that has all the features, but to turn the features on, like let's say the heated seats, you pay a subscription fee. And if you want to, and maybe like that watch feature that you're talking about, if you want to use that watch feature, that you have to pay. So on top of the car being, a luxury vehicle and the cost of that, they have this other subscription based model that they're putting on top of it, which I think is kind of interesting.
That is very interesting. Different revenue streams that they're working for. Here, by the way, is the progression of their logo over time. So they found a thing and they kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, the propeller thing is the static. It's always there. The typography has changed quite a bit.
Yeah,
over the years. I hadn't realized it had changed that much. This
one, the new one, seems like it's hopping back past this one, the three-dimensional one, to this design here, almost from which they must have had for a very long time.
Yeah. Cool.
But so thinking about brands and how you have consistency to them, we work with our clients to make sure they've got pretty clear standards for how to apply your brand. And so in talking about this topic and about, when a company has a brand or they're trying to think through and build out their brand, putting together a brand standard, brand manual or style guide is, like a key thing to like everybody getting on course and staying there.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm usually pretty shocked when I find out that we're, working with a new client and they don't have this. And it's like, well, then let's create one. This is our moment. We have to do this because it's so it's such an effective tool to consistently delivering your brand to the market, whatever your market is. And if you want people to not be confused about what you do and who you are, you need to do that. You need to consistently execute your brand, both visually and in what you're saying and in your messaging. So these are kind of like, they're called different things. We even internally call them different things. So brand standards, brand manual, brand style guide, those to me are all the same, but it's really just like, it really is like an owner's manual to the car. It just shows you, all the different features of the brand, what you can do with it. And then, you can communicate that to not only internal people that are going to be executing the brand, but if you are using like a printer externally or, some other vendor, then they're going to use the right color codes and they're going to, do all the right things with your brand. So that is the importance of it. It can be a printed thing or a digital thing or both. I've seen them executed in lots of different ways, but doesn't matter, just as long as you have it documented in some way.
Let's take a look at a couple, because we had pulled together a few examples that are sort of interesting. Maybe we'll start with what people might be more familiar with or
Sure.
might be quicker to them. I have here one from NASA.
Which is an older one. So some of the examples are, newer, but this one's, as you can see, was created in 1976. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't made edits to it over time. I don't know if there's annotations about that. I didn't look at that part, but it is pretty in depth. And you can see kind of with the table of contents, the different areas that they're covering. So the logo itself and, where you'll see the logo, how the different applications get played out. So
jumping ahead, so there's a lot of background here, and this is very government-y, not surprisingly. What a classic logo, though. Obviously, that the storied logo. And then they're showing, it's not random, the fonts and the applications of the sort of ways that they combine text and things with it in branded ways. So all of this kind of placement, line heights, and so forth would be laid out there. And then there's their color scheme. We see the color in their chosen logo color, variations that are approved and things that are not approved will be coming up as well.
Yeah, so that's another important feature of a standards manual. They show you how to not, the things you're not allowed to do with it, and all the things that could go wrong are laid out. So that's helpful.
Things like outlining it, putting borders around it, putting it inside a shape. There is literally nothing more 1976 that I've seen last week than this incorrect example.
This is why they felt like this was a something offensive happening in that time.
Well, it was worthy of letting people know, don't be tempted.
Don't do this.
Don't go that way. And also not using it.
I was just going to point that one out. Yeah.
This italicizing one. Yeah, that's we're trying to go faster.
Don't put NASA in a box. That was
but so they've got a lot of other things, complementary brands that they've got. They've got a lot of interesting things here. And then they'll go ahead to showing what are the different ways the art can be, the horizontal versus the vertical formats in different scales. And I'm sure they've got ideas for minimal sizes and so on. And then remember that this is from 1976. So they're actually expecting that you would be maybe scanning this in as opposed to like being able to find a file on a shared drive somewhere.
Right, a digital file.
So that's an old school and yet a great example because it shows like all the different pieces that you could possibly want. Maybe a newer one, again, sort of, exploration oriented, would be the one for Lonely Planet. And so here you'll see a lot of design.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a lot of very design heavy elements, and the user interface elements is what are interesting, I think.
Yes, they've got some nice color palette, big color palette, and with gray primary and secondary. And then a variety of like how the UI for their apps would be colored. So which color, which variations to use, some implications of different destination colors. And then finally the typography that they use as well. So we're seeing their headings, and then other body copy. And they've chosen some fonts here that are just super readable and friendly and very approachable in a way that fits with the brand and the message they're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then they've got a series of things about icons and all of their custom icons here, which are beautiful and fun. And I'm sure work at a variety of scales. So their guide is showing all of the elements that you can use. It's showing how to use it, the principles about it, and how to check that you're doing all the right things. So.
And it's a completely digital online, so anybody can access this.
Yeah, so it's a great inspiration, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any other ones that we had found that you wanted to specifically highlight?
I mean, I like all those three that are listed there. I think the UVA one, if you want to go to that one, or sorry, WVA, not UVA, West Virginia University is one I really like. And if you scroll down a little bit, it kind of has some wayfinding here. So if you want information about messaging, which, I mean, I think a lot of people think about the brand standards manual and they think just about the visual roles and the visual types of things, but the messaging is part of the brand experience as well. And so if you click into that messaging, then it sort of gets even fuller with more information. It's just exciting. I like messaging. So there's a messaging map. And just, personality and the audience. And it's just really, really well done.
It's a beautifully built out guide. And it does have all this wayfinding in it, so you can find your way through. It seems like a really comprehensive brand guide. And not just the things that we think about, like logo and identity usage. Like you say, there's the messaging, there's types of photography to use. And a thing that this is going to take a second to load since we're doing the streaming here, but what kinds of images they're suggesting, how you should crop them, how to highlight it, how to fit in copy space, and all of those pieces, which is pretty good to have all these examples. And I'm sure they've got libraries of images that you can use. And then the other thing I've been admiring since we hopped onto the site here is the elements they're using, including this cool topography style background, the different patterns to use, the angles of their diagonal line they want you to use. Don't use these other lines. So all the good, the flying WV background, which is very sharp. And then how all the things fit together so that they feel really cohesive. Yeah, so it's a really great guide. Good job, WVU.
Now the MailChimp one that is new, because they just rebranded within the last, I guess, maybe year or so. I was trying to find their old one, but of course that's probably not anywhere. I really liked their old one. Their new one's cool too, but I'm partial to their old one.
I've always liked, I'm drawn to things that have these sort of big kinds of contrast from large to small. And I think I might be maybe a little bit in the minority in liking these new hand drawings that they've been using in their branding. To me, it's very charming and quirky. But for some people, it might feel too charming and quirky. So.
To me, it felt like a departure from the old. I mean, I get, the brand evolves, and this is what feels right to them. And so that's part of these brand guides, is that they have to be responsive to, your changes that you're making to the brand. And, but I have a hard time reconciling the monkey icon with those illustrations. They don't feel like they fit to me. I don't dislike these illustrations. They are, to your point, very quirky and fun and interesting. But they don't, to me, jive with the monkey.
It's our little monkey man.
Yeah.
And branding it's just a fine example of how hard branding is.
It's very hard, yeah.
Hard to do well.
Yeah.
Well, so two great topics. Get out of your rut, redesign your brand. I guess, is that our message for this week?
Yeah, pay attention to if you don't have brand roles, create them, define them, and then document them.
Yes, yes. So that which is not going to put you in a rut, but is going to help you stay consistent, so that you can be consistent in your ways, so that you can be crazy in your imagination. There's some famous quote that I'm paraphrasing there, by famous writer.
Famous quote by famous writer. Got it.
Famous quote by a famous writer. We'll put it in the show notes later.
Well, no, I think that, one of the things that it feels kind of rigid to say, oh, we have to have these rules that we live by. But by having those rules, let's say our voice is fun. Okay. Well, that's just a rule, but then you have that's a springboard for any other idea that could come out of that. And so it gives you a springboard to build and, grow. But if you didn't have those rules, if you didn't know you needed to be fun in your voice, then you would just flounder around and be all sorts of things. And you would be directionless and it wouldn't be consistent. So
Yes.
Rules sort of breed flexibility and creativity. I don't know. That's not a famous quote.
I have found the quote, and I'm going to share it with you right now, and then we'll wrap up for the day. It is Gustave Flaubert, French author, and the quote is, "Be regular and orderly in your life, so that you may be violent and original in your work."
I like it.
Discover and read more.
I thought it was going to be maybe a quote about having a messy desk. Like creative people. There's been studies and stuff, like super creative people have messy desks.
Well, that seems to be the opposite of what he's saying.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I thought that it was going to be more like a chaos breed. Anyway.
Right. I guess those are all things that you could experiment with and test.
Mm-hmm. I'm a clean, orderly desk gal myself.
So. I know you're the clean desk person, and I am not.
Yep, and it works. All right. Well, we are definitely winding down in our 10th episode. That feels like so double digits, 10th episode of Shift Office Hours, and super exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so we're here every Friday live on the YouTubes to talk about topics of interest to marketing professionals and to people who need to market, and perhaps it's not their major thing, but they're trying to figure out how to make it work. So we'll be here again next week. You can send questions in ahead of time, topics, or give us feedback on the kind of things that we talked about this week or any of our previous shows.
Mm-hmm. We're happy to rehash old topics.
To bring new life to them and get out of the rut.
Mm-hmm.
So have a fabulous weekend, folks. Sarah, you stay safe. Have a safe trip back to Pennsylvania.
I will. Lots of hand washing.